This time on episode 422 of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we talk Moon Knight Season 1, Episode 4, The Tomb, weekly Marvel news, including Thor, Love and Thunder teaser trailer, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has a new release date, and Disney Plus working to restore access after certain episodes went missing, and we talk your feedback, including Mr. Paracletes commenting about the scene in the pyramid.
I'm SP from the GonnaGeek.com show, a weekly geek news podcast that is part of the GonnaGeek.com network. Just like the show you're checking out now, shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other amazing geek shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
You have been granted clearance by Director Alfonso Mack Mackenzie. Stand by for a S.H.I.E.L.D. debriefing. All information to be discussed here is classified and may only be discussed among agents granted clearance by the S.H.I.E.L.D. Director.
Now it's time for your scheduled debriefing. I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
I'm Consultant Anthony.
And I'm producer of the show, Director SP. Welcome to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., a Marvel Comic Universe fan show discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Marvel comic book universes as told on screen by Marvel Studios. This show is recorded on Thursday, April 21st, 2022, live from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. studios and broadcast Mooncast wide. Why don't you come and join our live chat as we record? Hey gang, happy World Creative and Innovation Day.
You couldn't come up with anything better than that?
Well, I would think that we're talking about comic books and we're talking about creativity and innovation. Comic books have been all about that ever since Stan Lee's early days at Timeless Comics?
Timely.
Are you just trying to shame me into writing this thing instead of talking about how I want to write this thing?
Yeah, sure. We can shame. Shame. No, I'm not shaming anybody.
Shame.
Also, happy Earth Day.
Woohoo!
Yeah, happy
Yay,
Earth
Earth.
Day. One of the last ones we're ever going to celebrate before the planet's fried to a crisp.
Could be true. Okay. Well, yep. This is World Innovation Day. It's been going on for a few years now. On 2017, I believe, was the day that it was first observed by the UN, and then it actually officially took place in 2018. So this is the fifth year, I guess, of World Creativity and Innovation Day. So I hope you've done something creative and innovative today.
Wouldn't that be this?
I was just going to say, we are doing it because we love talking about Marvel.
Because of very interestingly timed nerdgasms.
If you'd like to talk to us about your nerdgasms, you can visit our website, legendsofshield.com.
If you just really need somebody to listen to you info dump about your nerdgasm, you can call the voicemail at 844-THE-BUS-1. That's 844-843-2871.
You can send us your very long Twitter thread on Twitter at Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D.
If you have a really interesting visual aspect to your nerdgasms, why don't you make a video and then share it with us? You can find us over on YouTube at GonnaGeek.
You can share your immense info dump on our Discord server at GonnaGeek.com/Discord.
And don't forget that Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a proud member of the GonnaGeek.com network, where we basically just have nerdgasms all the time.
All the time. Matter of fact, we have double the nerdgasms tonight because we have Anthony guesting from his own podcast, Capes on the Couch. Again, Anthony, thank you for joining us.
That's good to be back. And I feel like this episode is the first one, maybe since the first episode, and even more so that you definitely need someone who knows Moon Knight to explain what in the name of all that is good and holy happened in the last third of the episode.
We definitely need to talk about that. I have some opinions on it as well, and we're just going to get into it right now because there's a lot to talk about. Moon Knight, Episode 4, The Tomb, premiered on Disney Plus Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. The IMDB description reads, Mark and Steven must find balance as supernatural threats look to stop them. All right, Michelle, who directed the episode?
This episode is directed by Justin Benson, has 12 directing credits starting in 2010, including 1 of The Twilight Zone, 1 Loki, and 6 Moon Knight.
And Chris, who wrote the episode?
We had 3 writers for this episode of Moon Knight. First up, we have Alex Meenehan, who has 3 writing credits since 2020, 11 of Bosch, and this episode of Moon Knight. We also have Peter Cameron, who has 10 writing credits since 2009, which include 8 episodes of Carnival Row, 9 episodes of this thing you might have heard of called WandaVision, and a pair of Moon Knight episodes. And finally, we have Sabir Pirzada, who has 5 writing credits since 2015, 2 of which were episodes of Person of Interest, 11 episodes of Roswell, New Mexico, and of course, 2 episodes of Moon Knight.
Yeah, this is the second episode for both Peter and Sabir. We'll talk about how successful they have been. By the way, Jeremy Slater is the Moon Knight showrunner. We've talked about him before. And we've talked a lot about the cast on the previous 3 episodes, about individuals that have appeared. And this episode was a little bit trying on the people that actually appeared and made special appearances, basically, in the episode. But we found one to talk about. Anthony, who played Dr. Grant?
Dr. Grant was played by Joseph Millson, who has been acting since about 1997, and he's got 72 credits to his name, according to his IMDb profile, among them Casino Royale, the Sarah Jane Adventures, and various genre video games. And so this was in his wheelhouse in terms of the role that he played as Dr. Grant and the pulpy throwback action sequence, such as it was his little appearance in the Tomb Buster segment of the episode.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in the meantime, so we don't step over each other on what actually happened in the episode, we have this little thing that we do, and it's exclusive to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. We have a synopsis that is definitely made for you. So Michelle, why don't you go ahead and start?
Stone Khonshu is helped to his dungeon-style Marvel Pop Funko display shelf and is correctly placed alphabetically with 9 of his fellow gods.
In what we presume is an elegant fight scene, but was virtually unwatchable due to extreme darkness, Layla puts her moves on the Harrow faithful, using 2 flares to dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge, saving the married couple from certain death.
The couple drive to Harrow's dig site, finding it ravished and abandoned, before Steven tells Layla Mark's motivations and punches himself out, possibly allowing the third personality to assume control of the body.
Once entering into the needlessly filmed dark underground maze, the couple discover protective mummified priest warriors, gross disembowelments, and an ever-antagonistic Arthur Harrow who sows the seeds of doubt between Layla and Mark.
Stephen discovers the tomb of Alexander the Great and uses the knowledge of the museum and tricks of Indiana Jones to grab Ahmed's Ushabti.
Instead of wisely running from Harrow, Layla and Mark decide to instead have a marital discussion regarding Mark's previous involvement in Layla's father's execution.
Harrow uses his trick from Indiana Jones and shoots Mark as he is effectively wielding a bladed melee weapon, causing Mark to tumble lifelessly into the tomb's bottomless pool.
In a clever use of Wormhole Extreme, Tomb Buster, the possible origins of Dr. Grant were shown.
Cut to a scene straight from FX's Legion. Mark finds himself sedated in a mental institution surrounded by people and items from the past few days. Is this his life or the afterlife, or is this an Ahmed-fueled dream?
Mark liberates Stephen from a sarcophagus, runs by another possible altar in a sarcophagus, and the twins are both confronted by a Hippo being in the form of the god Taweret, who just wanted to say hi as the credits roll to a joint scream of Stephen and Mark.
And that's what happened in the episode. So Michelle, you got the floor first. What are your first impressions of the episode?
Wow, I wish I could watch about like half of it. It was just so dark. It reminds me of that Game of Thrones episode. I don't know if it was just a cinematography thing or if it's Disney wanting to save a bunch of money, but that was a problem. And we had the whole mental hospital as a possible reality trope going on, and we'll talk more about that later.
I think my reactions are best summed up as a noise, roughly along the lines of, I love this.
This was the first episode where, having read Moon Knight comics, specifically the Jeff Lemire run, is almost a prerequisite, which has both pros and cons.
This is just my opinion, but I think it's the worst Marvel episode ever. Couldn't see half the episode. I watched it again today, and I think what Disney Plus did is they lightened up those dark scenes, because last night they were definitely darker than they are today. Half the episode was an aggravated Hallmark love story gone wrong between Layla and Mark, although we knew that was going to happen. And then half the episode was an acid trip without any context. And that's the key, without any context. If you go into this and you don't know anything about Moon Knight, you don't know anything about that previous comic book run that Anthony was talking about, Muggle audiences, that's what I'll call them, Muggle audiences that don't know about that, just won't be able to grasp it or care for it. Not saying us, I'm not saying fans, deep fans of Marvel. I'm saying normal people. This is just not watchable for them, in my opinion. Right, we didn't really talk about where we wanted to start the discussion, but I think we need to start at the end, because that ending has so much wrapped up into it. Like what happened, what's going on, that sort of thing. So Anthony, why don't you just lay down some law on what happened in that last 10 minutes?
So the psych facility and everything that occurred in it was very much a reference to the Jeff Lemire run, where the beginning of the arc has Mark trapped in a psych facility. Almost everything is all white, and he's surrounded by his friends and the regular cast of characters. If you're a fan of the comics, it's Frenchie, Gina, Crawley, Marlene, etc. And he's being sedated and regularly abused and attacked by two of the orderlies, who take great joy in torturing him. And he escapes to the roof to discover Khonshu waiting there, explaining to him that everything he's seeing with respect to the facility is not really there. And it's only when he puts on a crude version of a Moon Knight mask that he can see that the guards are really jackal-like beings under the auspices of Amit, or as the person is in the mental facility, it's Dr. Emmett. And so for me, when I was watching the episode and he falls into the pool, the whole Tomb Buster thing and the aspect ratio shift, I was like, okay, I really don't know where they're going with this. But because I had the background in the character, as soon as they zoomed out into the facility and you see all the characters that he's interacted with, and it was clear that it was a show that was on the TV and all the references to the previous episodes, I was able to click right back in and go, okay, I know what they're doing now, and I'm good. But I also acknowledge most people have no idea what the hell they're watching.
This is a trope of having someone wake up and, oh, they're in a mental hospital. Now, are we supposed to question their sanity and that? And not just for it being a trope, I knew it wasn't an actual mental illness facility. It wasn't a hospital for the mentally ill, because it's too white, too interior. I'm sorry, the interior design is too white. It's too clean. It's too quiet. And no doctor is going to have their office to see patients out in the middle of the common room. So if they wanted the viewer to have any sort of doubt of Mark or Steven having imagined the previous 3 episodes or have us question anything that's happened, that's not happening. So I immediately was like, well, this has to be some sort of afterlife sort of deal, because he fell into the water. And just like Luke Cage and Shang-Chi before him, we know he's not dead, because something's going to happen here. And then he's going to rise from the water, because that's what happened. Characters who supposedly die in the water, they come back cleansed and rejuvenated. That's another trope. So, of course, this has to be some sort of test or revelation. Yeah.
I do not have the comic background that Anthony spoke of earlier. Everything I know of Moon Knight, I learned from Anthony, literally. But I do enjoy watching really weird things. And so seeing this ending with all of the characters that we know in a completely new context, all of the Egyptian stuff around the hospital, which to me was kind of a giveaway that there was really something going on. And especially the fact that Mark Steven is sitting there holding an action figure of Moon Knight while he's strapped into the wheelchair. That's when I was instantly, okay. I really hate the reaction that people are going to have because we're watching this week by week. But when you can binge this and watch it all in one shot, maybe 2 shots, this is going to be so much better.
I would agree with you there. That's going to be a key difference as this goes forward and you're able to watch it all together. Unfortunately, while we're recording this, we're stuck in the week where we don't get to see episode 5. And if you're talking about linear television or even streaming television, that is like what we're doing on a weekly basis. Here's something that I've learned from Hollywood. The key to a good cliffhanger between episodes like we're talking about here, or seasons, is to have the audience question, what does this mean? Not what just happened. And in this particular case, that's what everybody's questioning, unless you have the background of what happened. I don't understand what's going on. Not what does this mean? So that's the key difference. If you look at any really good cliffhanger that we've watched in TV for a while, like the best of both worlds in Star Trek The Next Generation, there's an iconic cliffhanger in between season 3 and 4. It wasn't what just happened. It's literally, what does this mean? And I think that they missed the boat on this. Now, Chris, you pointed out, eventually this is just going to be a streaming show. So it's not really going to matter all that much, but for right now, it matters. And also, when you have to run to the media right afterwards to explain what happened, like the showrunner and the producers and everybody did, I think you failed in telling the story a bit. Now, there's something with mystery that could be there, but anyway, that's my key issue with this and the blackness of the episode as we first saw it. Hopefully they'll, like I said, they have lightened it up so you can see a little bit more. But the whole battle between Layla and with the mummified priest, I didn't know what the heck was going on there the first time I watched it. It wasn't good. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the end. So the other thing that happened with the end was that there was a second sarcophagus with some pounding on it. And there was also earlier in the episode a time where Steven knocked himself out right before he went down into the tomb. And I think in both cases, we're talking about another identity. And Anthony, would you agree with that?
I don't know that I agree with the second part of that. Jake is definitely in that sarcophagus. I will bet any amount of money that's who's in the sarcophagus, and we will likely see them next week. As to the Steven knocking himself out and falling down, I don't think that was an appearance by Jake. I think that was just Steven's way, or Mark's way, of getting back at Steven for kissing Layla. That Mark was just, I'm going to take control just long enough to just punch myself right in the face. I don't think Jake was necessarily involved with that. I think that was purely a Mark and Steven situation, which I thought was fantastically hilarious, by the way, and expertly acted by Oscar Isaac, as is everything else that he does in the show.
I think that if Mark is going to lay claims to Layla like that, then he needs to not be such a buttface.
I thought that was funny as well, the punching in the face. I didn't think that was Jake. I think Jake is in the other sarcophagus. Actually put that in my notes. You know, hey, I think that's Jake. And wouldn't Anthony be proud of me that I realized that's Jake? As for not opening it, I completely understand why they didn't. First off, Mark is trying to figure out what's going on. He's running away. He sees the first one, and that one is actually on the ground. There's banging, and he hears someone asking for help. Help, get me out of here. He opens it. He finds Steven. Steven is the known entity. And then when they run, the other sarcophagus is upright. So that is different, and really didn't hear anybody talk. And this reminds me, I actually put down in my notes, the Let's Make a Deal problem, which for those of you who don't know, Let's Make a Deal is a game show. At first, it was hosted by Monty Hall. It's now hosted by Wayne Brady, where people dress up. So I think it's really the first appearance of seeing cosplay on TV. But the big trope is, whether it's 3 boxes or 3 doors or something, it's always, here's this great prize. Try to guess which box or whatever it's in. But before you do that, I'm going to give you money or something safe for you to select. And that way you don't have to risk getting like the Zonker one, which sometimes was like a donkey. It was great for TV, but not for the people who end up getting a donkey. And it was one of those things. It was like, okay, Mark, I really don't know what's going on. I have Steven, who's a known entity. I'm not going to risk anything by opening up door number 3. So for those of you who are like, well, why didn't they just open it? That's why it was too unknown, with too much going on. I completely understand why they did not open it.
Let's talk about the fact that they were completely separate entities. This wasn't sharing the same body. Mark's in a different body than Steven. And Anthony, you pointed out that the Moon Knight figurine, that is another entity that is not in either body. And then you have the third body, or third identity, which is in the sarcophagus, assuming that is correct. So you have 4 different entities that are sharing the same body in real time outside of whatever this is. I don't know if it's dream world or whatever it is, but that is important, that they actually get to interact with each other, which the only way that they've ever had to do that in the past is through mirrors in the past, where they can talk back and forth to each other. They actually hugged each other in the hallway, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is great. So from that perspective, that was an amazing part of the episode that wouldn't have happened had they not been wherever they're at.
Yeah, it was very United States of Tara-esque. If you're familiar with that show, it was Toni Collette as a housewife with dissociative identity disorder. And the conceit for that show was that they would cut to a room inside of her head, basically a table with all of the various alters, and they were all played by Toni Collette, sitting at the table, and essentially whoever was at the head of the table was the alter that was in control of the physical body at this point. But it was a way for all of the alters to converse with each other. And so there was a very common trope that during the show, we would cut inside of, I forget the Tara. It was inside Tara's head, and see the various alters conversing. And sometimes it would lead to an alter taking control. Sometimes it was, I'm staying in control, but I'm going to give you the floor to speak your piece, so to speak. And so that's kind of what it reminded me of, but in a slightly darker sense.
Is this, Anthony, I was wondering if this also happened in that comic run you were talking about, having all of them in that space together like that?
So at the end of the Lemire run, they are able to coalesce and merge together, and also defeat Khonshu, because they realize that Khonshu has undue influence on all of them. And so Mark et al. Come to the realization that whether it's through the childhood trauma or because of the influence of Khonshu, that their alters, that his alters are all a part of him. And so he manages to essentially bring them all together. And so they merge, and Mark hugs Mark in that, or it's odd to describe because you have to kind of read throughout the whole run to understand it. But there is a hug amongst all of the alters, and they all acknowledge each other and cooperate and work together. So I thought that the hug between Stephen and Mark that we saw was a kind of homage to it, or at least saying this is the vibe that we're going for.
Let's talk about the very last scene and the very first scene. The very last scene, you have Stephen and Mark coming up with this entity that's a living hippopotamus, a hippopotamus in personal form. And she says, hi, like, I'm surprised too. And then Mark and Stephen scream together in the way that only Oscar Isaac can scream, right? It was a great Oscar Isaac scream. But let's equate that to the very first scene where we saw the stone version of Khonshu being placed in the, I don't know, viewing room or whatever you want to call it, the display room, with 9 other supposedly gods. I'm just assuming they're gods. That's an assumption that I made. So is this hippopotamus a god that might be on the shelf with Khonshu?
Eagle-eyed fans did pause and zoom in and say that there's one in the back that they're like 98% certain is Taweret.
Okay, so let's explore Taweret a little bit. What is Taweret?
She's the Egyptian goddess of fertility. As a very basic 2-second scan that I was going through, that's essentially what she represents.
Yeah, Chris and I were DMing last night after we'd both watched the episode, and we came up with that conclusion too, but I just wanted to make sure that I was going down the right road there. So supposedly maybe this god is going to help Stephen and Mark, and maybe the third altar move ahead with getting out of where they're at. I don't know. At this point, episode 5 and episode 6, the people involved with the show said they're going to blow our minds. So I hope so, because they put us in a position where I think there's nowhere to go but up. But that's just, again, my opinion.
And I also noticed when Mark was running away from Dr. Harrow, I don't know what that name was, we saw the crocodile-headed god. Is it crocodile or is it an alligator? Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
I saw the statue, yes.
Yes, you saw the statue. Did you see it? And they actually paused on it for a bit. So I remember, because someone in our comments before was like, the later gators, is it referring to that god? So when I saw that moment, I thought maybe the commenter, I'm sorry, listener, I am not remembering your name right now, but I'm remembering your comment.
Someone. That's great. I love that.
I listener, I remember you sent in that comment, and it came up when I was watching.
The god is Sobek, by the way.
And it's definitely a crocodile in that part of the world.
All right. Are you guys done talking about the last 10 minutes or so, or do you have anything more? Because I'd like to go back to the tomb.
I mean, only in the sense that I do want to say that Tomb Buster, the film within the show, there is a theory, so to speak, that we're going to see more of that next week, and that it might give us an opportunity to see Mark's comics accurate origin story told within the film, that we might get to see a version of Roa Bushman. We might get to see Dr. Alrain, some of those characters that we know from the comics. It might be a way for them to cheat a little bit and say, well, we're going to give you Bushman and Dr. Alrain and the shooting and everything, but it's going to be in the vein of this Indiana Jones, The Mummy, pulp style knockoff.
Yeah, in the synopsis that is exclusive to Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. I equated it to Wormhole Extreme, which is out of the Stargate SG universe. If you go to, I believe it's episode 200 of Stargate SG-1, you'll see Wormhole Extreme in there, which is a campy representation of the actual show, Stargate SG-1. I know this is a little bit different, but it had so many similarities that I thought I'd throw it in there. So for those wondering what Wormhole Extreme is, that's what it was. It was the spin-off spoof that was in episode 200 of Stargate SG-1. Let's go back to the tomb, because I would agree that that's straight out of Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider or whatever you want to call it. That part was kind of fun, except for the darkness of it. And I did enjoy the story. It was just very hard to watch. So what did you guys think of that whole thing, Chris?
The first thing that my wife and I said to each other basically at the same time was, hey, it looks like we're watching Uncharted.
I thought it was a great use of the mystery of Alexander the Great's tomb. Alexander the Great's, I have a couple of links in the show notes. It's to a 2-part documentary. It's like 15 minutes each, so it's a half hour if you want to watch. What's interesting about Alexander the Great body, when he died, because he didn't have an heir and he died away from Greece, chaos erupted around and his body was forgotten for days. Now, in the heat and everything, he should have started to decompose. This is not one account. Many people actually saw that when they went and they saw his body, they were expecting a mess. Instead, his body was still fine. Like it had just died. Like nothing was wrong with it. And taking that fact and having him being like an avatar to this god, it's a nice way of going, well, that could be an explanation as to why his body didn't decompose. He was this avatar to this god, and that made him extra, extra special. Where is Alexander the Great's tomb is one of the great modern mysteries, because his body was known from going from one sarcophagus to another. Ptolemy of Egypt actually stole the sarcophagus on its way back to Greece because he wanted to solidify his power in Egypt. And Alexander the Great was the epitome of being like the perfect, not so much man, but he ended up being worshipped like a god. You know, strategy, you know, he was smart, the strategy, he conquered half the known world. So it was just really great. People are like, is it there? People are like, it could be like in the Vatican because of another switch with the possibility. Some think it's Alexander, the city of Alexandria has sunken and the modern one is built on top of it. So people think it's underneath there. It's one of those things. It's like, where is Alexander the Great's tomb? Where's the Ark of the Covenant? Where's this? When I saw that and he was like, this is Alexander the Great's tomb. I'm going, oh, good one. Good one, creators. Good one.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I actually, when the episode was done, looked up information on Alexander the Great and the tomb, because I was like, do we really not know anything about where he's buried, etc.? But I will also say that as much as I enjoyed all of that, I did have to boost the lighting on my TV just a titch. And I have an OLED television. I'm not saying that as a brag. I'm saying because it provides such fantastic contrast, and I still couldn't see what the hell was going on. Now, admittedly, the first time I watched it was in the daytime with the light with sunlight kind of shining on my screen. So I had to close the curtains and I had to shift my TV settings just to be able to see what was happening. I watched it again at night with my wife and I was able to pick up a lot more. And I'm wondering, I don't remember if it was Chris or SP, but if they tweaked the contrast and the lighting just a little bit for folks later in the day because they were getting so many complaints, which is what HBO should have done with Game of Thrones, but that's a whole another discussion.
Yeah, that was me. I do have an old LED television and I had problems. I turned off all the lights in the house. It was completely dark and I still couldn't see it. It was very, very frustrated. I have special movie glasses to put on that are not bifocals that are just meant for distance. It was meant for movies and for sporty events and stuff like that. And nothing worked. Nothing at all. I tried to get closer. That didn't work either. And it was very frustrating. Now, back to the whole actual tomb thing. You had some mystery there. You had some callbacks. Remember, at the end of episode 1, I told you guys there's going to be something in this episode that's going to be referred back to in the finale. And one of the things that came back was the whole how you mummify people. So that priest was doing it to that poor guy, follower of Harrow, right on the table. But that's where the little figurine, the
Ushabti?
Ushabti, thank you. The little Ushabti, and he had to go in and fish it out because that's the way that mummies are embalmed, I guess. I don't know what exactly to call it. That's the way that the bodies were prepared for the afterlife, right? He had to go in and do that. So that was a callback back to episode 1 right there, as was Donna. I was like, are we ever going to see Donna again? And then we get to see Donna in the last 10 minutes. So there's a couple of callbacks to the first episode. This is in episode 6, but we've already had a couple of callbacks here. And that was good. The whole thing of Layla and Mark arguing in front of the tomb of Alexander the Great. I mean, Layla, you got to know. I know you're mad at the guy, but if you stay there, bad things are going to happen. So get the heck out of there. So that whole trope thing of arguing why bad forces are coming in, I was like, Layla is too smart to do. Maybe she was emotionally distraught because it was her dad or something like that. But I'm like, get out of there. Get out of there. Like screaming at the TV, get out of there. And they just didn't get out of there. But the fact as they were going in, Stephen was drawing out the shape of the tomb and how it was configured, and they decided to go through the tongue because that's where the voice of Amit was going to be. That was great. Straight out of all those archaeology action films and series and video games that we've been talking about. So that part of the episode was pretty great. I also want to say the acting was really good throughout the episode. I have no problems with the acting in this whatsoever. And it's just the production value, the editing, the cinematography that I had issues with. There wasn't a lot of fights in this episode. I just wanted to say that as well. There wasn't a lot of fights in the episode. I mean, we got a couple of short action scenes, but there weren't any huge epic fights. I mean, the one time that we started to get an epic fight, it was Mark as he was wielding that blade, right? And then Arthur just shot him straight out of Indiana Jones. So that was interesting. I don't know if there's anything too much to say about the beginning when they're going through the desert and then there's that action scene. I think it was literally trying to get from where they were to the tomb. And that unfortunately was shot way too dark, in my opinion. I watched it several times that night because I'm like, what am I watching? I don't understand. And it took me a long time to realize that they were trying to depict the ammo storage box that was there from that big mounted gun, and that she was going to throw the flare into that ammo box and then set it off. It took me a long time to realize that that's what they were trying to show. And even after I knew what happened, it was difficult to see. Keep on talking about the darkness of the episode. I need to stop because we've hit that hard. All right. Anything else in the episode that you guys want to talk about, Chris?
It really bothered me that when they were trying to figure out how to get out, Mark and Layla have finally, or Stephen and Layla rather, have finally decided that they're going to run away way too late. So Layla runs. That part's fine. Stephen, yeah, I'll figure out a way out. You know what's usually a good sign of a way out? Is when there's light coming into the room. Light from straight above him. If nothing else, climb through the hole in the ceiling.
If you have a ladder.
Well, he can jump. He can climb on top of stuff.
Okay.
Just go. You've already shown this that you're athletic and everything. Just do it, Steven.
He was doing some parkour on the rooftops earlier. Yeah. Okay.
The Heka worshippers, although cool as a concept with the clicking and everything, it was so out of left field. There wasn't any foreshadowing or indication that that was going to be a thing. So that kind of threw me for a loop. I felt like Layla and Stephen when they were in the tomb and they were like, what are they shooting at? I was like, I have no idea what the hell is going on. There's been no indication of anything like that throughout this show. So that to me just seemed like it was like, wait, what? That threw me more than the mental facility at the end.
Well, they'd already had their Uncharted and Tomb Raider references, so they needed to get a Last of Us reference in there too.
I was thinking more like, I don't know, I guess I was feeling some Temple of Doom vibes.
Well, if you have a brain full of snakes, yeah, there was a lot of snake skins in that one room that was above the main room. And I wish we could have gotten a better look at that, because I was trying to figure out what was going on up there. And other than it being a loft, I have no idea why it was there.
So wait, the Heka people aren't connected to Amit? I thought, okay, if anybody's confused about where they came from, then that's a problem.
Yeah, I got nothing on that.
Okay, wow.
It's new to me.
So they weren't the priests that were protecting Amit? Or protecting Alexander? I'm lost.
I mean, they very well could have been, but there was just, like I said, no foreshadowing or anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just something in the cave, something in the tomb. All right. I think we're talked out about the episode. Let's talk about the future. Predictions. Who wants to go first?
Everything and nothing is on the table now. So I'm going to predict that the Moon Knight action figure will enlarge in size Power Ranger style. And that will be what helps bust Mark, Steven, Jake back into reality.
I said earlier, we're definitely going to see Jake. And I believe all of the gods whose Ushabtis we see in the room, along with Khonshu, are going to be needed to battle Amit. And it's going to lead to potentially another sea change in the MCU in terms of gods and mythology and control over humanity.
Yeah, I was hoping all of the gods that are displayed, it's like, free them all, free them. I think that is going to definitely happen. Yeah, Jake's going to come around. I was hoping more for Layla, but maybe in the next 2 episodes, she's written better and she gets to, kick some more butt like she did in the previous episode.
I don't necessarily think I had a qualm with Layla and how she was portrayed and everything, other than the let's get out of the Alexander the Great's tomb area. But there could have been more action. She is definitely an action star, so I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to bring up before we left that we've been talking about where is this in relation to the MCU. Well, the showrunner, Jeremy Slater, responded to a fan on Twitter who was asking, where is this in relation to the MCU? And it's linked in the show notes. But he basically admitted the lack of a firm date of the MCU. He said, quote, a lot of people have asked about when Moon Knight takes place in the MCU, but I have no idea. Sorry, we didn't know when our show would debut in relation to their other shows and films, so the timeline was intentionally left vague, unquote. So he doesn't even know if it's pre-snap, post-snap, post-endgame. He doesn't know, or he's not saying, or maybe he just got it wrong. Like he was thinking in terms of this is post-endgame and we just don't know where it's fitting in post-endgame. So very open-ended answer there. And that's from the showrunner. There you go. All right. Next time, hopefully we'll be talking about episode 5 of Moon Knight. And until then, we do have other news stories to talk about.
All right, so first up, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse news. It heads to summer 2023, and So what's going on is Sony's animated sequel to the Oscar-winning movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, is moving from October 7th this year to June 2nd, 2023. The news is breaking just before the studio's presentation at CinemaCon next week. Meanwhile, the Pix sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, is dated for March 29, 2024. The movies will screen in premium, large format, and IMAX.
I don't know about you guys, but this is a little disappointing to me to be pushing this that far out, because Into the Spider-Verse was amazing, and I've just been looking forward to the sequel. Now, that said, I do want them to get it right. If they need to take the extra time to get it right, that's okay with me. But I just want to see it.
Same.
Yeah, a lot of the chat going around on Reddit indicates that it's because they're working on the appearance and the story, and they're refining it, and they want to get this right because they know that they have a very high bar to clear with respect to the first film, and they do not want to blow it.
That being said, we do have 2 special guests to show us their reaction.
Aww.
Miles and Gwen are sad.
Aww. Well, they might be sad, but they're working right now. They're...
Yeah, but they wanted us to be able to see it sooner.
Yeah. Well, don't we all? All right, Chris, you have an ongoing series of news stories now. I think this is the 4th week in a row that we've been talking about it. What's going on with Disney Plus?
This week, and Disney Plus doesn't know how to keep their fingers out of the pie. They have had customers relay online and verified sources from Deadline that their purge of episodes before was not something that they intentionally did. It was a technical issue, which they have since come around and fixed. We had some updates in here. You do have some episodes that were missing from titles like Agent Carter, X-Men, some unrelated things like the DuckTales cartoon, Lizzie McGuire, Owl House, if you have small kids. They're having episodes just pop back up. Meanwhile, Disney has said they are actively working to resolve the issue, impacting access to a subset of series episodes for some Disney Plus subscribers, and they're sorry for the experience and appreciate everyone's patience. I think they've got to get a handle on these interns, though, because obviously they are letting them have a little bit too much freedom, and I'm not going to throw out big ol' accusations, but they might be partaking in some things that would be better used after work.
Yeah, this is a problem. It's like after they've gotten the Netflix series, they have a lot of plates spinning and someone is knocking them over, lying that they knocked them over, gluing it back together quickly and putting it back on the thing to put it spinning again. They've got to get a handle on this because Netflix, there's a whole thing about Netflix going down in viewership and, hit the stock market and such like that. Disney Plus cannot afford to look unprofessional and to look unpolished. It needs to have that higher standard if it's going to continue to be the place to go instead of like Netflix and such.
I honestly don't know whether it's incompetence or if it's deliberate and they've wanted to try to do some things underneath the radar and they're getting caught with it right now. I don't know which it is, or maybe it's a combination, but yeah, I agree, Michelle. They need to focus in on getting this right, especially as they start to raise prices, as everybody's raising prices and people are honestly saying where they want to actually spend their money for the month. Because even with something like Moon Knight, you can come back to it with Disney Plus in a month or two and stream it if you're on another service like Paramount Plus trying to watch Picard right now. And you're like, out of the two, I want to watch Picard, so I'm going to subscribe to Paramount Plus so I can see that. And then when Moon Knight is over, I'm going to go over back to Disney Plus and do that. I mean, those decisions are being made by people that are trying to be scrupulous with their money. It is what it is, and I just hope that Disney Plus gets it right. And also, this indicates the amount of attention that is on Disney Plus. Because people are looking at it with a microscope to come up with this sort of stuff. Like they noticed what episodes of what series were not there anymore. Like DuckTales. In my opinion, who cares if an episode of DuckTales is missing? But for those fans of DuckTales, they care.
Excuse you?
Yeah, excuse me. I care greatly. DuckTales reboot is one of the greatest TV shows ever made, and I stand by that statement.
You're my friend again.
That's your opinion, and you're interested in it, and then you are paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Somebody is paying attention to all this with a microscope to pull it all together, though.
If you're going to experiment, you don't experiment with DuckTales. You experiment with Lizzie McGuire.
Yeah, and you leave Owl House alone because Owl House is also amazing.
Truth. I was going to say two real quick things. One, Disney owns Star Wars, so I think they're taking a cue from George Lucas and saying, we're just going to continue to meddle with all this stuff even after it's been released and see if anybody notices. And two, none of these companies need to raise prices at all. They're making more money than God. Hand over fist, ease up a little bit on the rest of us, and maybe don't splurge for that third yacht. Just be happy with the two that you have. CEOs and execs at these conglomerates.
Did you see the projections for next quarter for Netflix, though? They are projecting they're going to lose 2 million subscribers. That's not small. That's concerning for Netflix.
I thought it was 200,000, but in any case...
They lost 200,000. They're looking at losing 2 million next quarter.
And they might lose more if they crack down on the password sharing, because some people are actually Netflix customers so they can share with others. And if they can't share with others, because Netflix to watch it on more than one screen is $13 a month. So you can watch it on multiple screens, because it's rough when you have people who are watching Netflix. And so, I caved because I got tired of asking the person I live with if they're on Netflix and what. And so I just caved because I watch a lot of Korean stuff right now. And it's really the only reason why I still have Netflix, because of that. Anyway, and it's just like, it keeps raising its price. And it's going to get to the point where, can I find my Korean shows someplace else? Because I've heard there might be another streaming service I can, and I need to find out if I can find those ones there. Because if Netflix raises their prices again, it's not going to become worth it, at least not for me.
Yeah, we're taking a hard look in the household on what everybody's watching right now, because I am cutting the cord this year. I keep saying that, but I am cutting the cord. We've already made the provisions for it. It's simply a matter of watching everything that's left on the DVRs. But then we have to make sure that we are continuing to, because I'm not going to blindly have subscriptions to stuff that nobody watches. So I'm going to make sure that people are watching it every month, and then I'll pull it. And Disney Plus is part of that. I think Disney Plus has enough content between Star Wars and Marvel for me to be keeping it year round. But if they slip up a month or two and don't have any new content, I'll pull out. No problem there, just to save a few bucks, because I'm not on a subscription. I'm on month to month for all of them. Anyway, let's talk about something that's even more awesome, which, my bad, we should have started talking about it, but it's not actually highlighted in the show notes. Anthony, what happened this week with Marvel Studios?
Finally, the Thor Love and Thunder trailer has come to the internet. After many, many complaints and almost meme-like daily posts by Marvel fans, we finally this week were able to watch the first teaser trailer for the fourth Thor film, Love and Thunder, which has finally shown us for the first official time Jane Foster, the return of Natalie Portman, who will forever hold a piece of my heart, as the mighty Thor. And the plot synopsis has officially referred to her as Mighty Thor, which is a direct pull from the Jason Aaron run of the comics. So it is very clear that the Aaron run is going to be heavily influencing this film. Even more so of not just a reference, but a direct rip from the Jason Aaron runs, is one of the most comics accurate shots to date in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which shows Thor and Taika Waititi's Korg standing atop a rock overlooking the corpse of a god who in the comics was identified as Falagar the Behemoth, who died at the hands of Gore the God Butcher, who we know is going to be played by Christian Bale and is going to be the primary villain of the film. So aside from the fact that the comic panel features just Thor and the shot from the film has Thor and Korg, it is a exact recreation of a panel as drawn by Asad Rabich. And I actually tweeted shortly after seeing this that unfortunately, the fact that they're using Asad Rabich's artwork as essentially concept art and it makes it all the way into the film means that he'll get a thank you in the credits, maybe an invitation to the premiere, but no actual money. They are copying his work and putting it in a new medium and saying, thanks for that, but you already got paid for the panel, so we're not going to give you anything else, because that's how Marvel runs. Also, there's a shot in the trailer where Thor and Korg are left behind by the Guardians of the Galaxy, who fly off in the Milano, or I forget if there's a new name for the ship, but Thor is in the middle of the shot, Korg is on our right, and the left third of the screen is wide and empty, just with the background. There is no way that the scene is going to feature just, in the finished film, there's no way that's going to be just Thor and Korg. There is absolutely a character to the left who has been digitally scrubbed to prevent spoilers. And I am certain, I am going to wager a good sum of money that it is a certain horse-faced warrior that is known to wield Mjolnir and Stormbreaker and other various weaponry. So I'm going to bet we're going to see Beta Ray Bill in this film.
Can we also make sure, though, we have to mention Natalie Portman having a new set of things to rap about? I am so excited for that possibility. Plus, she just looks amazing in this shot. I'm watching this trailer, like, jokingly, but oh no, we're just going to get a buddy movie. Okay. Oh crap, Natalie Portman. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I can't believe we're getting a fourth Thor movie and that I'm actually wanting to see it.
Well, first of all, Natalie Portman, we've talked about it before on the podcast. She trained hard to be ripped as much as she can. I don't know how much CGI that they're going to throw on her body, but she's going to look like Thor in her muscles and everything, which is great. I mean, she's done other things before that she's looked very athletic and great in, but this will be taking that to a new level. So it'd be fun seeing her in this. And as for the other scenes in here, like the scene of the Thor and Korg on the mountaintop and the scene with the digitally removed, we're projecting at least, digitally removed character. Marvel's been known before to throw scenes in trailers which do not show up in the movie, or change scenes in trailers that show up in the movie. So, I don't know. Maybe we don't get Korg on the mountaintop. Maybe the scene with the missing character is not going to be in the movie. I don't know. But this at least gets me excited to see the movie. I mean, it was great with the Sweet Child of Mine song playing throughout the entire thing. And it felt like another generation of a Thor movie or Guardians of the Galaxy movie, or both thrown together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this, to get back to the MCU as we kind of knew it, but we know that it's going to move on from where we have had it, because the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie we've heard has been very tearful. So this might be one of our last shots to see the Guardians. All right, guys, that's it for the news. Let's move on to some feedback. We got some great feedback on Twitter by Mr. Paracletes. We're going to call him out not once, but twice. First of all, he responded back to us about our coverage of, I believe, 2 episodes ago, said their inability to detect Amit's power in Harrow kind of feels like when the Jedi Council couldn't detect Palpatine's power on the ride from Coruscant to Naboo. Yeah, that is true because they're not sensing. So this is when they're in the council room. This is last episode when they're in the council room and when Khonshu is trying to, and Mark, they're both trying to testify against Arthur, and Harrow just wins it. And they're like, we can't feel Amit's power. But I think we've kind of seen the result of that now where 10 gods are now on stoned in the wall, not just Khonshu. So there's been a continual force trying to do this, guys. So yeah. What do you guys think about them not detecting Amit's power in Harrow?
It's mostly in the cane, though, right?
Still, the cane was in the room.
Yeah, they should have noticed.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, somebody that has access to the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. Twitter account posted this little thing that, I don't know, a few Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. hosts might or might not be interested in. Oh, yeah, it's the Marvel Squirrel Girl, the Unbeatable radio show on XM Sirius Radio. Yeah, so we tweeted that, and then Mr. Paracletes came back to us and said, I wondered if you guys heard about this. Figured Lauren had. Now, Lauren isn't with us tonight, but we did talk to her behind the scenes, and she basically let out a Squirrel Girl Laura squee when she heard about it. So thank you very much, Mr. Paracletes, for interacting with us on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. You can also find us and talk to us all you want on our Discord server at GonnaGeek.com/Discord. All right, Michelle, I think it's time to do something else tonight. So what should we do?
Well, we're going to jump on a cliff and we're going to Nathan Drake shimmy our way out of here.
Anthony, thank you very much for joining us. We really needed you this week. I mean, we really needed you this week. So thank you so much. And I know you're getting joy out of talking about Moon Knight, but you are also providing us and our listeners with all your expertise, all your fandom on Moon Knight. Thank you very much for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
And if people want to find your great talent elsewhere, where would they do it?
Well, you can find us on, you can find me on my other podcast, my primary podcast, Capes on the Couch, where we actually just released our first ever sequel episode, which covers Moon Knight, because we did him 4 years ago. And so we just did a new episode covering everything that Mark Spector has been up to in the comics over the past 4 years. And you can find that on all podcatchers except for Spotify. Our website is capesonthecouch.com. And we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch.
And I thank everyone for listening or watching. If you watch this on YouTube, thank you very much. You can follow me on Twitter at @Shell_game. And right now, I'm just here right now.
If you like hearing more from me, then the best place is to head on over to playcomics.com, where you can hear an episode that I recorded way too long ago, where I talked to Cullen Bunn about cool Cullen Bunn things. Now, granted, this was when Shadow Man was starting, and we did not have any knowledge of him writing our current, destined to be a classic Power Rangers versus Godzilla series. So there is no mention of that. But it is a really fun episode you should go check out.
I just completed my guest stint on Smoking and Drinking in Space. We covered all 6 seasons of The Expanse. We covered it 1 episode at a time. So 6 total episodes of Smoking and Drinking in Space. You can find that over on creativebraincandy.com. And it was really fun, including the season that we killed Shang-Chi. Because, The Expanse did kill Shang-Chi. Or you might think of it this way. if Shang-Chi didn't die in The Expanse, then he wouldn't have had his own movie. Mind blown. All right. Thank you very much, listener. We really appreciate you coming by. If you have any feedback, we'd love to talk about it in the future. We know you have questions about this episode. Hit us up, and Anthony would be glad to talk to you or respond to you on the next podcast, or you can hit him up at all the places that he said. So until next time, I'm Director SP.
I'm Agent Michelle.
I'm Agent Chris.
And I'm Consultant Anthony.
See everybody next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you want to leave us feedback, go to gonnageek.com and you will find all our contact information and other shows. You can also visit legendsofshield.com, where you'll find our complete archive of podcasts. The music heard on this podcast is by Kevin MacLeod, found at incompetech.com, and also artists on pond5.com and audiojungle.net. The opinions heard on this podcast are those of the individual hosts and do not represent Stargate Pioneer Productions, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., or Gonna Geek. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the property of the Disney Corporation, Marvel Studios, and ABC. No infringement is intended.
Say, Chris, did you find that necklace for Kaylee?
Not yet. I'm starting to worry.
Yeah, I'd be worried very much so.
Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. is copyright 2013 through 2022.